Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob. He's Joe, and we thank you for taking the time to join us today. Joe, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, enjoying the summer, doing what we can here, having a lot of stuff going on at the game house, but just enjoying things right now. Hopefully the Reds can keep on turning things around. It hasn't been the greatest last couple weeks for them, but we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, there's still a lot of baseball to play. That's for sure. You got a full half of a season right now. Reds are gonna really have to turn it around, I think, but we'll get into that a little bit more. We are gonna start with our question of the day, Joe. Who will be the Reds All-Star / All-Stars? There are options. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is the last week for those predictions before they make the official announcement. Either that or I think they'll have some, fill-ins or whatever as well. So the one thing I guess we can quickly just state is Ellie De La Cruz already turned down an invite to the Home Run Derby, which, if I'm being honest with you, Joe, I was really genuinely hoping that that's what he would end up doing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, for a guy who's had difficulties finding his swing consistently, especially a guy who has to figure it out from both sides of the plate, it is not a good idea to do the home run derby. I usually say it's a mental thing, and like players really just overthink it when they do it. But for a young player who is having some of those problems, which some of them are, it seems like mental problems at the plate. I would rather him not do it. It would be really cool for Cincinnati if he did, but I'm totally cool with that decision.
Yeah, I am as well. Well, let's head into it here. Pirates series. Unfortunate one. The Reds go 1-2. For some reason, the Pirates seem to just continue to be a thorn in the Reds' side. Pittsburgh as a city continues to be that. Jonathan India and Ellie De La Cruz, Spencer Steele, pretty much everybody hit. In the first game, though, on that Monday, 11-5 win for the Reds. Ellie had a home run. He was, I believe, a triple away from the cycle in that game, which would have been pretty crazy. Carson Spires pitched extremely well. 6 innings, 3 earned runs, 5 Ks. Looked very solid after an okay outing against the Pirates. Something that we'll have to look at with Spires, Joe, when we talk a little bit about the Nick Lodolo situation here a little bit later. But we continue on. It was a 9-5 loss for the Reds. Hunter Green had arguably his worst start of the season. Buck Farmer came up or came out there, gave up 2 runs as well. He's been consistent all year, but just happened to have a bad game. India, continued his double streak, having 2 in this week, and even Tyler Stevenson adding in a rare triple right before the birth of his child, which I believe was coming a couple days later. The Reds then go on to lose 6-1 in a pretty rough game. Everything looked good, and then Ashcraft just did what he does and had the wheels fall off again. He looked like he was pitching well. He has got to figure it out for him to stick in this rotation. He's got good stuff. He seemingly gets through the first 3 or 4 innings pretty well most of the time, and then it's right around the 4th, 5th, and 6th that he will just completely fall off the rails. But India, again, continued his streak of doubles here. The Reds really, for some reason, just could not get to Ortiz, who's been having a good year. And the Reds dropped the final game in the series against the Pirates. We continue on. They do go on the road to St. Louis and win in a very fun game on Thursday night. An 11-4 win for the Reds. St. Louis really just never had a chance in this game. The Reds went up big. Spencer Steer with a home run. Ellie with a really fun triple as well. Andrew Abbott looked not great, but he keeps you in games. Even in games where he walked 6, he still only gave up 2 earned runs and was able to get himself a win there against the Cardinals. The next day, though, as always seems to happen with the Reds, they have an offensive breakout and then can't hit the broadside of a barn even with a baseball bat. They lose 1-0. Frankie Montas threw very well. Nick Martinez, great in relief. For some reason, Palante just has their number. I believe he's now 5-0 all time against the Reds. And it was a very rough game, to say the least, for our Red Legs, as Montas only gave up 1 run in the 3rd inning. The Reds then go on to win 9-4 on Saturday. Carson Spires, another really solid start, Joe. Only 4 strikeouts, but only 1 earned run given up on the home run. 6 innings pitched, 3 hits. Looked absolutely outstanding. It was a doubles day for everybody. Austin Wynns comes up in his first game filling in for Tyler Stevenson, and the paternity list has 3 doubles. Ellie with another triple. And most of the Reds got in on the hitting action yet again with 13 hits here, getting to old friend Sonny Gray. And then after an offensive explosion, the Reds go on and muster 2 hits against Lance Lynn and company. Very embarrassing day. Hunter Green couldn't get through 5, even though he pitched relatively well. It's just pitch count was up. Clearly didn't have it completely, but didn't look terrible. He got into trouble in the 5th, and David Bell, as you can tell, is already feeling the pressure, Joe, to get wins at this point in the season, as he pulled him, I think, a lot earlier than people would have liked. The only 2 hits, a single from Stuart Fairchild, and you guessed it, a double from Jonathan India. Joe, this week was frustrating, I think is the way I'm going to put it. I don't think that the Pirates or the Cardinals are a better team than the Reds, but for some reason it just doesn't seem like the Reds can find a way to be consistent enough to win, is the way that I would, I guess, parse this out.
Yeah, we're a streaky team with a bunch of streaky players, and it just never seems to all come together. Last week we talked a lot about David Bell and how he probably should be fired. And yeah, like, it's not all his fault for sure, but he's had 7 years to, have a crack at it. But also, it is a lot of these players, man. Like, it'll be, even some of these young guys, it'll be frustrating to watch these guys' careers if they don't figure out some sort of consistency. And I'm glad some guys have figured it out. Like Candy, obviously, at the beginning of June, had such a good stretch there, and now Jonathan India the last couple of weeks of June. But we're just, you're right. Like, talent-wise, we should be a team who is maybe in one of the wild card spots. Maybe not leading the division over the Brewers, but at least in one of the wild card spots right now. Injuries, suspensions obviously have hurt, but a lot of teams have injuries and probably not suspensions, but injuries that they have to deal with. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed, is we might need to find hitters who are not just good at the trade deadline or probably this offseason, but also hitters who can just be a little bit more consistent. Like this, I don't think I've ever seen players have as bad of starts to the seasons as like Jonathan India and Candy had, but also totally turn it around so quickly in a way that, like, we're not even halfway, or I guess we're just over halfway through the season right now in terms of games played. And they've already gone from having batting averages after about a month or two of like below 200 to now being at 278 for India and 243 for Candy, which I didn't even think was possible. But good for them for doing it. It's just, you're right. I think there's a lot of things going wrong with this team, and it makes it hard to believe they will be able to rebound just with, all the injuries, the streakiness, the defensive errors, the base running kind of, I don't know, base running, I guess, would say just not being as good as it should be. Just hard to see how this team really comes out of it this season, but a lot to address for next season then.
Yeah, and I think we'll dive into that here in a little bit, Joe. I will say the Reds are only 4.5 games out still. I know that's wild, but like, it's literally takes 1 5 or 6 game winning streak and they're right back in the playoffs. And that's not out of the question for this team necessarily. And you do have to, I still am on we need a change in the managerial locker room, like there just needs to be somebody else. But it is hard when Friedel's out again, Candy's out, Lodolo's out again. Brandon Williamson, we thought was would be the best number 6 pitcher in baseball and hasn't been able to play at all. And you add into that, McLean's not been great all year, or hasn't been available all year. Marte had 3 hits in his first game back. His bat looks fine. He just looks unconfident right now is the way I would describe it. And he looks like a young hitter who is struggling with breaking balls away. I watched him swing at 3 straight breaking balls in the exact same spot, and I was like, okay, Marte's just not seeing the ball right now. So, Joe, like, it is interesting to see how the streaks too, because the team actually hit pretty decently in June, but their pitching was off in June, right? And it's against teams that are not better lineups. Like I saw something on Reddit that was really funny. That was like, man, I wish we could play the Dodgers and the Phillies every single week because for some reason the Reds seem to do well against them. And I don't know what it is. It seems like a Cincinnati curse where we just play to the level of our opponents. Like never can just totally blow them away. But it does make it hard when you're starting Benson and Austin Wins in a regular season game on a regular basis. So I think depth right now is probably the biggest problem I have with this team. But they've also been racked with injuries. So I would have loved to have seen, and I don't know if we will get it this year, but I would have loved to have seen like 2 months of this team with a regular lineup. And I feel like they would be a lot. I think we might be singing a different tune, and I'm hoping that, maybe we can get to an everybody but, Matt McLean type of lineup here in the next week with, I believe, Candy coming back, and Friedel should be back here pretty soon as well. So we will have to see if that matters or not. But as always, after a disappointing week, even though we did go 3-4, I like to go with a positive here. Jonathan India wins Player of the Week. Joe, he has been outstanding. A .539 batting average, a .923 OPS, 10 doubles, 5 RBIs, 8 runs. I want to give you his stats real quick. So April and May, his batting average was .228 and .220 respectively, an OPS of .650 and .670. In the month of June, 27 games played, 13 doubles, 2 home runs, 16 RBIs, 10 walks to 22 strikeouts. His walks actually went down substantially this month. That's the only negative. But a .380 batting average, a .587 slugging, good for a .1041 OPS. And, look, his batting average on balls put in play was unbelievably high, .471. He will not be able to continue that, although he is hitting the absolute crap out of the ball. It's not like those are just little dinkers that are just going over. I think those doubles show that he is actually making good contact with the ball. I'm wondering, Joe, does this, in your mind, change where you're at with Jonathan India? Because he is now batting, you said, what was it, 278 on the season, right?
Yep.
Which is pretty incredible based on what we had seen out of him over the last year plus. Where are you at with him? What do you think of him? And I guess give him at least a congratulations before we dissect him for his Player of the Week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to give him his props for what he's done the last couple of weeks here. Just like I said, tears you just don't normally see players go on unless they're like stars. It's kind of, I guess, the way I would put it. Yeah, he's a guy that we've seen this from him before, but it's been in like small doses, or it's been like a couple of years ago when you were Rookie of the Year. Last year, remember, he started off in the leadoff spot and was hitting really well, and then they moved him down, and he just kind of like faltered. And I think it might be a little bit mental with him. So whatever we need to do to keep him hitting the ball well, this does show the importance of keeping him. A lot of people wanted him to be traded this offseason or even last year at the trade deadline because we have so many young guys. But as we've seen, we just never know what you're going to get from a young guy. I mean, any of these guys, I think Ellie might not be a bust in the sense of like, he's going to provide value even if he doesn't hit the ball all that well, even though he's up to 252, and I'm very happy with that. But, like, all these guys could be busts, right? Like, maybe McLean has injury issues his whole career. Maybe Marte can't figure it out. Like, CES injured. Maybe he can't figure it out because he didn't play too well earlier this year. So, getting a guy that at least has done it before when he won that Rookie of the Year award, and at least last year he had that sliver of the first, like, I don't know, I think it was like month or two of the season where he was playing pretty well at the leadoff spot. Someone you want to keep around, and it seems like a good locker room guy as well. So, I know we'll be talking about probably in the next couple of weeks here, probably trade candidates who we're going to send off. Indy is a guy I don't think you can afford to trade now, which is weird because we still have a logjam in terms of number of players for the infield, but some of these guys aren't really like working out quite yet because of the injuries or because of maybe they're not reaching their potential or suspensions or whatever. So yeah, I think you keep him, and I think the fact that he's proven he can do it before is great. I think maybe you change things around him, and with that I mean like maybe hitting coach for the philosophy, maybe manager. Maybe we start getting some more players in the lineup around him to help him out too. You have to give him his props. I will say I did not think he was going to be able to recover like this season. I kind of thought, as I said earlier, like maybe this is just who he is, and maybe maybe we don't know where he is because it's still so young in his career. But definitely a lot of props to him, and I think it is something that we will be talking about for the next couple of years here of how at least for these 2 weeks, and at least maybe the last month, it's been a very good decision to bring him back, especially given all the weird stuff that's happened to this Reds team this year.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm like 50-50 on where like what we would do with him because I don't think he's got a good enough bat to be a DH. I don't think that he's good enough like defensively to take over a position for anyone, right? Because you got Steer in left, Marte is likely at third, McLean at second, and Elliott short, and even at first base, if you want to move him there, but CES is gonna be there potentially as well, like. We will have to see what happens with him. Honestly, I think the McLean injury is really going to be the one that we're going to have to watch for during the offseason. The sad thing is like his value is never going to be higher than it is right now. And while I don't want to get rid of him, you got to also look at where do we put Edwin Arroyo because he'll probably be ready in the next year and a half, right? Like there are, I think, a lot of questions with India. I don't think they will move him, to be very clear, but. I'm looking at his Baseball Savant page. His batting run value is insanely high, which is great. He's still one of the least chasing like bad pitches players in baseball. He's in the 99th percentile in his chase percentage, Joe, which is absolutely insane. But his bat speed is below 50. His average exit velocity is still at 30%. And he's not necessarily fast. So what I'm seeing, in my opinion, you can let me know if you feel differently. I think he's becoming a smarter player. Which can last longer. I don't know necessarily that his skills are the same level as the rest of these guys, but based on the walks that I saw him taking earlier this season, his ability to put the bat on the ball, and now he's, I think, identifying better pitches that he wants to hit, he does intrigue me. I just wish that we could figure out where the hell he's going to go. Because that's my issue, is it's just like, I just don't know who he takes the bat from. Like, yes, if McLean is injured all the time, then having India there makes a ton of sense. He's still only 27 years old. You probably got another good 5 years out of him without it being much of an issue, right? At third base, he can't play third base. I don't think he really has the arm for it, to be honest with you. But, I just don't know that he would take it over there. I'm really wondering, because he's also not super fast. So I don't know how well his tracking would be in the outfield. He feels like somebody who's in no man's land at the moment, which is disappointing for me because I love seeing him be successful. I really like having him on this team. I just don't know where he fits with this team long term. And if the Reds are 8 games under at the trade deadline, I will be honest with you, I think they should consider trading him. We'll have to see here over the next few weeks. I'm not normally that kind of guy, but if he continues on this tear, the Reds could ask for a king's ransom for him. And I know everybody's like, well, I don't want to have to restart. Well, you're still not restarting. You're just kind of cutting off the excess fat for a guy who's clearly too good to be a bench guy, but clearly not good enough, at least in my mind, to take one of the spots from the young guys.
That's where I disagree. I just don't think the young guys have proven it yet. I do think India has played third base before in his baseball career, specifically at Florida when he was in college.
Okay.
But even if you don't want to put him there, you can move the infield around to make it work. I don't think you can afford to take bats out of the lineup, and because we don't know, I'm thinking that McLean, we know he's going to be a solid hitter based on what he did. I'm thinking Ellie, you can't take him out of the lineup whether you put him at short or third, right? But there's no one else here that I think is just like, you can't bench this guy, or this guy's definitely going to work out. And that's why I think you have to keep him to see that. Now, you're right. Like, the value is nothing, may never get higher. So if you get blown away with an offer, yeah, sure, trade him, start building up for next year. That's always my philosophy. Like, there's a couple guys you're just not trading, and that's probably some of the young starting pitchers we have, the top 3 starting pitchers we have, Ellie and Matt McLean. Those are probably the only guys I would say you don't trade when you're trying to rebuild for next season. But we don't know Christian Encarnacion Strand's going to be able to hit at the major league level. We don't know Marte's going to be able to hit at the major league level. We don't know any of this stuff. I think it's going to make fans a little bit angry when we might be trading. Maybe it's India, maybe it's Candelario. I mean, it's one of those things. We signed him. He's a veteran. These young guys, so we're not going to win this year. It's not much use to having the veteran on the roster at the end of the year. So, I think that's the thing that I think is going to be hard to figure out is if India continues to hit like this, let's say like he hits like 265 or better. That's still well better than anyone else on the team. I don't think you can take him out of the lineup, even just because some young guys have potential. Especially when we're giving Will Benson the 5th most at bats on the team right now, and like I know it's different positions. He's in the outfield, but like that just means you can't afford to take someone out of the lineup like him. So if we are saying, hey, rebuild, trade him, get a very good value for him, that's great. But that doesn't mean we have fixed our holes for next season either, because I just think a lot of these guys, whether they haven't had enough playing time, whether they've been injured, suspended, there's a decent chance that some of them may not work out, and that's what we're seeing so far. Is other than Ellie and McClain when he was healthy, and Marte at the end of last year too, but like for a smaller, very much smaller portion size, we just don't know what we're getting out of these young guys. That's what makes this debate so tough, and what I think they're going to have some tough decisions in the Reds front office, and right now I don't know if I trust them to make the right decisions with this type of big things going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm looking at India's contract. That's the other thing is he's not a free agent. He's got ARB3 in 2026. So he's not a free agent until he's 30. Because I was like, well, maybe next year is his last year. But it is... I just feel like the Reds are in a really tough position, Joe, to be honest with you, especially with him, because I still think that I'd rather roll the dice with Marte or with Arroyo, honestly, and just kind of see what happens. Because otherwise, India could easily just go right back down to batting 240. And then, to me, it's like if the season is... If we're not at the point where we are adding this season, in my mind, then we should be subtracting and trying to get more value. Because you can use those valuable pieces, because the Reds have at least shown that they can do a good job at identifying talent. Whether or not it actually pans out or not, I don't know, but they seemingly come out ahead in a lot of deals lately. I feel like they could really get a king's ransom for him based on the way that he is playing and be able to not completely rebuild, but reload off of just one trade of like him and maybe Montas, to be honest with you. And they still would be in the same position that they would be next year. And if they really, really needed a bat, then you have those extra prospects. And then people will be like, well, are you going to be able to find a player as good as Jonathan India? I think you can, to be honest with you. I think there are players as good as Jonathan India to either get out there in free agency or on the trade market, especially this offseason. So it's not that I want to give up or I dislike Jonathan India. I think he's really, really good for what we need right now. But I would love to be wrong and hope that this team is going to be in it here shortly. But unless you have anything else you want to put on to India, we do have to talk about what's coming up here, Joe, because there's a lot of... I'm feeling personally a little bit of skepticism for our Cincinnati Reds, especially with the week that we have coming up based off of the last week that we had. So you got any final thoughts on the India, discussion?
No, I mean, I think we agree on most of that. It's just, I'm a big fan. I'm on full sell mode right now. We can talk about 4.5 games out of the wild card, but I'm in full sell mode. So if it is a discussion about India and being traded, I'm not opposed to trading him. I just don't know that what we have is going to be, able to do what India is doing. We could go sign someone like you said, and all the things that have happened this year have made it almost impossible to see what we actually have from a MLB talent level roster. It's not really easy. I understand that for the front office. India's playing well right now. You're right. He probably will die down and go down to a 240 hitter, but it just makes it tough, man. We don't know what Marte is. We don't know what CES is. We don't know if we're going to be trading anyone else. Like if we trade Candy, do we not trade India? Do we trade both of them? Ultimately, I say you do trade both of them. That's usually my thing. Is like let's rebuild 100%. So a lot to be decided. We're in the moment right now. So Jonathan India hitting 278 will not probably last, but I am very impressed with how he's doing. And yeah, I do think that we'll have some tough decisions to make whether we trade him or other people.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be kind of diving into our next part of our discussion here. I'm going to kind of combine this one here, Joe. Um, Look, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I know we have been a lot of this season because I think we really had expectations that this team would be better. I even placed a bet that 82 and a half wins. I took the over for sure. Um, to be honest, they can still hit that. I think relatively easily. If they go like 3 games over 500 this season, they'll still, or for the last half of the season, they'll still finish, I believe, like 3 games over. I think it'll be 83 wins. So, um, you know, we anticipated June being a lot better than May, and it was, but the Reds still finished 14-13. And I think we are at a point where we're gonna dive into this Yankees series, Tigers series, but then we finally get a little bit of a break with the Rockies and the Marlins. Theoretically, we thought it was gonna be that way with the Cardinals, with the Pirates. I just don't know what this team is, Joe. Like, do you think we're done? I mean, I just don't know. Like, I really feel like being 5 games under is not great. That's not a good feeling. And they should be, or it may be 6. 1 second. They're 6 games under. Like, at this point, I was really hoping like 3. I was really hoping for 3. And it may not seem like that big. Oh, it's only 3 games. At this point, it starts becoming a big deal. Because every week, if you're going 1 game under or 3 games, like you could literally go 1 game under for the rest of the year and you'd still finish like 12 games under 500. That's terrible. You know what I mean? Like that's just bad based on what this team is. They have exciting players. I think people, honestly, the things I've been seeing out of Ellie and Spencer Steer specifically have been giving me hope again that they have finally started to make the adjustments that they needed to. The fact that every team knows that you can pitch us up and nobody can seemingly hit an up fastball, which is, I think, if everybody else knows it, including the booth and many fans, I don't know how we're not working on that and identifying that as something to work on in batting practice before the game. Like it's very confusing to me. It's also confusing to me that, like you said, like they continue to give Will Benson at bats. I was the biggest Will Benson fan. I was a huge defender of him, but at this point, I'd rather see Levi Jordan. I don't even think Levi Jordan's any good. He's older. He's really never had a chance in the MLB. But like you're at the point now where Will Benson is not giving you productive at bats pretty much every single time he comes to bat. It's almost like it feels like 2 out of every 10 times, maybe 1 out of every 10 times, he's having a productive at bat, and that's just unacceptable to me. Like give me Steer in left, give me Stu Fairchild in center field, and Jake Fraley every single day. That's what I want. But they keep giving Benson at bats, and it's just tough to watch. And I'm just really wondering, Joe, like, where do we go? 1 game over 500 in June is just not acceptable to me based on the schedule that we played. And I know it's still relatively easy down the stretch, Joe, but like, come on, man. They gotta find one of these months where they can put it together, both hitting and pitching wise, and I just don't know when that's gonna be.
Yeah, it's over from my perspective. I gave up on them this week specifically. Since that 6-game win streak earlier in June, they have lost 3 straight weeks. In terms of the whole week, they've lost gone 3-4 last week and everything. You pair that with like, yeah, there's still some talent available on the team, but a lot of talent right now is unavailable and won't be back for a while, and we don't really know what's going on. So you talk about McLean and CES and Marte's just coming back and not playing well. There's not really a path I can see this team taking to get better. I said the same thing about India and Candy turning their seasons around, though, so maybe I'm wrong. But with all that going on, keep in mind Nick Lodolo keeps on getting injured. And that's our biggest strength the whole season has been our top 3 starting pitchers. I don't know. I don't think it gets better. We've brought up so many different guys to try to hit the ball. No one has really hit the ball. I'm with you. Will Benson needs less at bats still, even with the other guys not hitting the ball. We have the bullpen can be good sometimes. I think their usage has kind of hurt them a little bit, but sometimes they're not very good. I don't see a way we get from point A to point B, knowing that we don't have depth in the minor leagues right now ready to help us come up and play. I don't think we have trade pieces to really go out and help us get players to win this season and say like, hey, this week we go 500 against the Yankees and Tigers or something like that, right? And then, it's fine. So we're still 6 games under 500. And then we go to next week and we have an easy schedule and we win 6 games. Well, we're still at that point, even that's when we've every game, which I think we might do worse than that. We're 500. There's teams right now in the last wild card spot. I believe the last wild card spot is 43 and 40. They're 3 games above 500. So we still got plenty of work to do, and that's if like everything goes exactly our way. It's a streaky team, so anything can happen. But I think we have less than a month to decide whether we're buyers or sellers. I think I'm leaning towards 9 out of 10. We're going to be sellers. So we'll see how that goes. But there's just may not be enough time in a month where we have the All-Star break too to really turn this thing around before we have to make that decision.
I feel like the All-Star break is going to be really important in terms of these players are going to get some rest. But at the same time, if I'm Will Benson or Santiago Espinal or Graham Ashcraft, whoever's just been, and Espinal's been fine in a reserve role, to be clear. But like, if you're not hitting and you're not throwing well, you better be in there every single day. Maybe not physically throwing, but mentally figuring out what is going on with your game, right? Because yeah, you mentioned it before, like Lodolo not being healthy. This is wild to me because this guy is potentially a top 10 pitcher in baseball when he is healthy. Like truly, he has that potential to be that. He pitched 19 games in 2022, 7 in 2023. His first 5 were outstanding, and then his last 2 when he got hurt were just god-awful. It threw off his ERA, everything. 12 games so far in 2024. He's been hurt 3 different times. Now, I calculated, Joe, he still has a chance to get to 30 starts in a season. Okay? There is the opportunity for that to happen if he's healthy the rest of the way. If that happens, great. He honestly, like, that's fantastic. I think that, like, I will forgive everything else because you can almost pencil in a win every single time that he has thrown so far. If this offense is even slightly better, Joe, Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, and Nick Lodolo are going to give you a chance to win 3 out of 5 games almost every single week. The problem is that you got to have that 4th or 5th guy. And Montas he's been shaky, but like I feel more often that he has been better than worse, to be honest with you. It's either he has a start like he did in Seattle where he can't get out of the second, or he's going 5 or 6 and he's only given up maybe 3. Right? The starting pitching is giving them a chance. I think the bullpen, largely outside of Alexis Diaz, has been pretty solid. I think, him and maybe like Justin Wilson, I would say. Even Wilson's not been terrible, but it's just not been fantastic. I'm still shocked that he is on this roster over Alex Young, but that's neither here nor there. His season average, Joe, I went and looked. If he pitched in 34 games a year, he'd have a 3.8 ERA, 186 innings pitched. I think it'd be closer to 200 based on the way that he's been pitching this full year. 30 home runs given up, which is not great, but I think that would also come down. But 225 Ks a season. That would be 5th in Major League Baseball based on what we saw last year, which would be over guys, like Garrett Cole, Verlander, although he's older, obviously. Even I believe it was over Zach Wheeler as well. I'd have to check, but like there are a lot of guys. He'd be right there. I think he was like it would have been 10 behind the leader in strikeouts last season. So like I'm just concerned because it's like we're relying on him. And to be honest with you, what's been really interesting, and I think we need to pair this in there as well, Carson Spires has been really solid, dude. I don't think he's overpowering, but he is pretty accurate. He only has 8 walks in 61 innings pitched. He's not a huge strikeout guy, but the batting average against isn't terribly high either. It's 253. Like, I wonder, do you just throw Carson Spires the rest of this year, Joe, at this point, and make him your 5th? And then, like, truthfully, do you just trade Frankie Montas and go a rotation of Green, Abbott, a healthy Lodolo, Spires, and Ashcraft. I mean, I know Ashcraft hasn't been great, but like you're not going to get much more out of Montas this year if you're not sure that you're going to go all the way anyways. And even if you do go to the playoffs, you only need 3 starters. So like I'm kind of compounding this into a Lodolo's injury, Spires pitching well, and what are we going to do with Montas?
Yeah, this is I'm fine with Spires getting the chance. He's done a good job. He's had like maybe 1 or 2 bad outings this year, which for what we expected out of him, not that bad considering he's had eight games pitched, 3 started. I mean, that's his usage has been all over the place. He's done pretty well in any role. 3.13 ERA. You can win with that. Do need to see probably more of them before we trust him. But if the thought process, which I think I have the same thing as you, is like if we get after this week, if we have a bad week this week or get to the All-Star break, we're in the same spot. We're 6 games under 500 or whatever. Why not trade Candy? Why not trade India? Why not trade Frankie Montas? Like these guys were the guys supposed to help us win now. I think you want to see the young players the rest of the way anyway. You want to see, hey, is Marte going to work out on as a fielder, as a hitter? Is Graham Ashcraft going to be able to figure out his stuff? Is Spires an actual answer here? Or is he just a stopgap until we get the next guy up? It is never a bad idea to trade those guys away when you have a chance to next offseason go spend more money to get other guys in when you get these contracts off your books now. So the Reds don't have much in terms of what they're responsible for paying, so they have money. Don't let the ownership lie to you on that. But yeah, I would trade them and try to get some prospects back, try to help the depth of this organization. We don't have many guys who are ready to come up right now, like we talked about for pitchers. Rhett Lauder's kind of struggling, and we talked about Connor Phillips just having the worst year probably of any pitcher we can ever remember in minor leagues. So yeah, give Spires his chance. I would trade Frankie, and thanks Frankie for helping us out. We're just not in a position to win. You had some good starts, you had some bad starts, but we just needed a guy to eat innings, and you did that when you were healthy. But I don't see why you wouldn't try to trade the guys that are on bigger contracts. There's likely, like I said, 2 to 3 guys who are 2 to 3 hitters who are untradeable, three pitchers who are untradeable for us right now. Everyone else, I think you listen to offers. And see what happens. And there's other young guys I'm not going to trade, but they haven't really proven themselves to be untradeable. So I'm along with that thought process. I think let Spires pitch the rest of the year. Trade Frankie if you need to, if you can, if you get some value out of it. Because honestly, next year may not be worth his contract. I believe he's $20 million next year as well. So if we have 3 good starters, do we need him at $20 million, or can we go get someone else cheaper who can just eat innings? It's just a lot of things to consider in these next couple of weeks here, based on how they play these until the All-Star break in 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I will apologize. I accidentally was reading partially Nick Martinez's stats, so which we know Martinez has been excellent out of the bullpen. His starts have been the bigger problem, but Carson Spires actually only has 7 walks in 37 innings, only 1 home run given up, and a .247 batting average against. So actually doing better even than I thought. A guy who I will also put up there, guys, is Fernando Cruz as a potential trade option as well. At 34 years old, he might actually be one of the more valuable pieces that I think the Reds would be willing to move on from, as I believe his contract will be up here relatively soon, and you just don't know what you're going to get out of a 35-year-old reliever who's never shown it before. So, look, we're not going to totally give up on this season, to be honest with you. I don't think we should. I think the next week, as per usual, is going to tell us even more. It'll continue to, add pieces to that puzzle, Joe. We're going to take just a few minutes here before we go into Yankees Tigers talk. Final predictions for All-Star or All-Stars for the Reds. I would love to know. I'd love for you to start off here. Who do you think is ultimately going to get the nod for the Reds? Now, and if I remember correctly, a replacement can't be considered as your main All-Star. I don't know if that's true, but I'm pretty sure that a replacement, like you get one, and then if you have a guy that gets added later, like they aren't going to take away the one that you have already been given, if I remember correctly. It could be wrong, but
unless that guy's the one who gets replaced because he's injured or something, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just because I think Ellie has a chance based on being third in the All-Star voting. That was the only reason why. Continue. Sorry, Joe.
No, you're good. No, I feel similarly to how I felt a couple weeks ago. I think they probably get one All Star. I think it's probably one of the starting pitchers. The voting just yesterday went to phase two, so it's basically everyone has to vote between two different players at each position from here on out. I don't believe the Reds had anyone in the top two of any position,
They did not.
so they will not be voted in as obviously the hitters get voted in for the starters. No one's gonna be voted in for the Reds. The That makes it tough because I think it comes down to Hunter Green or Andrew Abbott. I think Hunter Green gets the nod because he's got more of the name, and I think that'll get him on the roster. Abbott's had a fantastic year, but obviously he's not. He pitches to contact is a different thing, and he's not wasn't as good as a prospect as Hunter Green was, so he just doesn't have the publicity. So I think Hunter Green's gonna be the All Star. There's a chance Ellie gets added to the roster. Specifically, if the National League really wants to be competitive and win, I think having him off the bench could be really cool with his speed. But did not make that final two vote. India could be an option that we talked about him a little bit earlier, Rob. He didn't make that final two vote either. The problem is the second baseman. We talked about the shortstops last week with Ellie and having to get through them. The second basemen in the National League are pretty good as well. We got Arias and we have Kihil Marte, I believe, as second baseman, who are both in the final two of the voting. It'd be hard. I think both those guys would make it over India. Now, we do get one, so if they don't take a pitcher, it probably is India or Ellie, but I'm saying Hunter Green is my pick as the only All-Star, despite his ERA going up a little bit based on that last start.
Yeah, second base right now, it's Ketel Marte and Luis Arias, like you said. Shortstop, Trey Turner, Mookie Betts. The problem is Mookie Betts is hurt. So what I'm going to say is I actually think the Reds might get three, Joe. Here's why. I think they're going to get one of the pitchers for sure. I think it's either going to be Hunter Green or if Lodolo comes back and has two more excellent starts, I believe he will be close enough in innings pitched for them to actually be able to bring him in. I mean, he's truly been excellent. When he is healthy right now, he is an all-star in my mind. Like truly, his batting average, his ERA is like under 3. He's striking out some of the most batters in baseball per inning. He's been very, very good. But my official predictions are that I think it's going to be Hunter Green. And then I actually think with Mookie Betts being hurt, I think that they will pick, because you got to remember David Bell is on the All-Star team as well. With what's the manager for the Diamondbacks name? Is it Lovolo, right? Terry Lovolo?
Yeah, it's a tough one to say, but you got it close as I think I can get. I believe.
Okay.
I believe that's the manager.
Or Terry Lovulo, whatever. I think they will put Ellie on there. I know he denied the home run derby. I think baseball wants him in there. So I think the Reds get at least 2 because, again, Ellie can't be like a bench player in that regard. Like, it has to be like a player that's actually picked, which is why it's normally a pitcher if you don't make it into the starting roles. And I don't see another shortstop right now. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to check that. You could see CJ Abrams as the Nationals guy. Potentially that could be a problem, although actually one of their best hitters, funny enough, Joe, has been Jesse Winker. He's actually had a pretty solid season, but it genuinely would be between Abrams and Ellie De La Cruz. Looking at OPS right now, it's Mookie Betts and then CJ Abrams and Ellie De La Cruz. So it would likely be between one of them. I think the 40 bases would be what gets Ellie De La Cruz in over CJ Abrams, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think it's going to be him. And then I think Lodolo might get in, or India, to be honest with you. If India continues to be as hot as he is, he will get to a point where he actually probably should be in even now, Joe. Funny enough, OPS-wise, he is third in all of baseball at second base, behind Ketel Marte and Jose Altuve. So there's a real world where he actually could get in as well. So I'm going to say that those are my 3. I think India will hit at least well enough over the next couple weeks to continue to see his batting average climb a little bit. And we'll see if he gets in. And if he doesn't get in, then I think it's going to be Lodolo. So I think it'll be 2 or 3.
I'm still going 1. I think Ellie's probably the second best behind Hunter Green, personally. Lodolo was on the 15-day IL 6 days ago. I don't think he's going to
They
get
said he's only missing
enough
two
starts. And
starts.
even missing two. Okay, so he's got to miss this week, right? And then
He misses
he'll be
one
back.
more start, and then he's back.
Yeah. So I don't know if we'll be able to get to the numbers that you're projecting. The timeline doesn't add up for me, and I don't think they're going to want to send a guy to the All Star game who, you know, possibly is going to come back from his injury. He's had a lot of injuries where it's like, hey, he's going to come back, and then he doesn't. So I've ruled Lodolo out personally, but I do think Ellie could be a second. Remember, there's 20 position players, 12 pitchers. I believe that's right. Or maybe I have that backwards on the All Star roster. So yeah, I think there's a possibility they could end up on the bench just given the injuries. But if we're talking like guys who aren't just alternates, I would say Hunter Green
Yeah.
is the only All Star who was chosen. And if we get an alternate, it'll probably be Ellie. Is my vote.
Okay, cool. So we're between 2 and 3. I think makes sense. Um, excuse me, a little disappointing. I would love to see Lodolo or even India get in. I think India would be fun to have in there. Be cool to see him get a nod. Regardless of my opinion of if they're going to trade him or not. I really hope they don't. I love Jonathan India. He's one of my favorite players on the Reds for the last probably 5 years or so, or in the last 5 years, I should say. But yeah, okay, well, we'll move on here, Joe. Yankees time. Here we go. Ashcraft versus Gill. Abbott versus Rod. I always thought it was Rondon, but it's saying it's Rodon. Is that right?
Rodon.
Rodon.
Yeah, Carlos
Okay.
Rodon.
Wow. Okay. I had always heard it pronounced seriously, like even on video games, Rondon. But maybe I just am a stupid person who just can't understand what people are saying, which is probably true. And then you got Montaz versus Stroman. Clay Holmes is 19 of 23, one of the better closers. Really one of the I think, rated closers in baseball. Clay Holmes has been solid for a while. A lineup something like Volpe, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Verdugo, Gleyber Torres, Ben Rice, Austin Wells, DJ LeMahieu, Trent Grisham with a bench of Jose Trevino, JD Davis, who they recently picked up off of waivers from the Athletics, Oswaldo Cabrera, or maybe they traded for him. I don't remember. They got him from the Athletics. Jahmai Jones, and I believe that Giancarlo Stanton may be back this week. He's been on the 10-day DL. Another guy who has consistently been hurt in his career. But that's the way it's looking there. They're one of the best teams in baseball, Joe. They come into this at 54 and 32. They're top 5 in most categories. Aaron Judge and Juan Soto are one of the best combos I've seen in baseball in a very long time. They are just killing the ball this season. Anthony Volpe is the only one that really steals any bases. And I put in the notes, this may be the series that ends our season, to be honest with you, officially. But Joe, I want to hear where you were at against this team. I will say before I jump out of here and give you the mic, after Verdugo, especially if Giancarlo Stanton isn't fully healthy or back, this lineup is pretty awful. They are truly carried by their top 4 or 5 hitters. And if you can find a way to get through that absolute gauntlet, you probably shouldn't be beat by a Gleyber Torres, even though he's been a top prospect and has hit at different times. He's not hitting this year. You're not going to get beat by a Ben Rice and Austin Wells. DJ LeMahieu used to be one of the better hitters in baseball. He's really fallen off. And Trent Grisham isn't anything to write home about either. I don't know. Where are you at on this series, Joe?
Yeah, real quick, just to wrap up the Lodolo thing, he is eligible to come off the IL on July 10th, so he gets one more start probably,
Okay.
if my math is right on that. But
That is right.
yeah, for the series, this Yankees team is. I think the lineup is a little deceiving. I think you kind of put it pretty well. There's a couple good hitters in here, but it's not good top to bottom. So that's something to keep in mind. There might be points where you want to walk some of the guys at the top end of the lineup and get to some other guys later on. You've got guys like DJ LeMahieu who's struggling this year. He used to be a really good hitter for them and the Rockies way back when. So yeah, there's definitely holes in the lineup for the pitchers to exploit. Specifically looking at Abbott here as one of our top guys going on against him. This team has some really good starting pitching, not in the sense of like the guys who have been like aces this year, but they have so many quality arms down the line. I mean, you're talking about Stroman, you're talking about Nestor Cortez,
Yep.
you're talking all these guys and we're going to have to go against Stroman in the last game. So that's the concern here. The good news is their bullpen is pretty beat up right now. And I do think that if you can get past the starters, there's a chance that you can put some runs on the Yankees if you get to the bullpen the way it is currently constructed. That's just easier said than done when they have so many good starters and guys that I think could probably get our guys out right now. Now, we've seen Ellie play well against some bigger teams and some bigger markets. Maybe this can motivate him. And I don't think the Yankees are one of the top, 2 or 3 best teams in baseball right now. As they're currently constructed, I would take a lot of teams, maybe three or so teams over them with the way their roster is. But they're much better than us, and that deserves respect. So for that reason, I'm going to go 0-3, Rob. We might squeak out that one with Abbott as the starting pitcher. I would love to see that, but I really do respect the Yankees starting pitching, and I respect the stars they have in their lineup. If we do get those wins, it's going to be getting to their bullpen. It's going to be getting the guys at the end of the lineup out and just not giving up disastrous home runs to some of the guys early on in their lineup. So I'm going to go 0-3.
Yeah, and there's something about playing in Yankee Stadium as well that younger guys who've never really played there before, you either shine very bright, like I think De La Cruz could, or you kind of forget where you are and you get intimidated because you've been playing in Cincinnati in front of the biggest crowds you're playing in front of are the happy fans. In New York, specifically with the Yankees, you're playing against a roster, or just you're playing against fans that are very loud, very boisterous, very intense, I think is the nice way to put it. The sad thing is, Joe, is that I'm also going 0-3, and I do think that this actually ends our season officially. I just don't see how you come back from 9 games under. You can. It's happened. Hell, the Rockies won 20 straight games to make the playoffs and then freaking go all the way to the World Series, right? And the A's have went on a 20-game winning streak, right? Like there are teams that you can win 10 games in a row, right? But even if you go 0-3 here and you win 10 games in a row, you're 1 game over 500. Like that's awful. That's just not good. That is not where you want to be. The only saving grace truly is that we're playing the Rockies and the Marlins. If you find a way to win all of those games, then sure. Maybe this series doesn't matter. You're 2 games under 500 and you're right back in the race. But it's just really tough. This team, I think, is really good. They like to hit it home. I will say, having Abbott go, Soto's a lefty, Verdugo's a lefty. If you can kind of take them out of the game a little bit and not let Judge or Anthony Volpe beat you, then I think you have a chance in that game. I mean, look, this Reds team has beaten really good teams. We never thought they had a chance and they swept the Dodgers, right? They do things like that. And that's just the weird stuff that they do. I can't remember if they're getting back TJ Friedel this week, Joe. I want to say maybe, and I'm pretty sure Candy should be back too. I'm almost certain he's coming back, I think even today, which I guess I didn't say at the beginning. Sorry, we are recording this on a Tuesday. We got a little bit busy on Monday with NBA free agency and a couple other things. But yeah, I don't know. Like their lineup, like you said, is deceptive. There's a part of me that wants to go 2-1. There's just something in me that's like, this team is going to keep fighting. They're going to find a way. They're going to get some big hits against, Rodon and maybe even Stroman, to be honest with you, because I don't remember, but I don't think he's pitched very well against the Reds in his career. Not that it normally matters because the lineups are different, but it's just a weird thing to think about. But I just think this is going to be an 0-3, man. I think this team's a lot better. They're 18 games over 500 for a reason, right? Regardless of what you think of their lineup, of their team, it doesn't really matter when the results are what the results are. So I am also going to go 0-3. Dropping us to 9 games under, dropping us to 39-48, which is pretty rough to say the least. But the hope starts, if you're going to have any, against Detroit, Joe. We go on a massive home stretch here. We will play up until the All-Star break. We will play 13 straight games at home before heading into it, against the Tigers, Rockies, and the Marlins. All teams that are well under 500. Teams that I will personally tell you are not very good. If the Reds are going to find a way to gain 7 games back on their record, this has to be the time. The Tigers, we will be throwing out Carson Spires, Hunter Green, and Nick Lodolo against this team. Their closer is Jason Foley, who I've honestly never heard of up until I was looking him up. He is 13 of 15 so far this year. Their lineup includes Wenceel Perez, Riley Green, Matt Verling, Mark Canha. When you're batting Mark Canha fourth, just going to say it's not a great lineup. Carson Kelly, Colt Keith, Gio Urshela, Zach McKinstry, and Justin Henry Mallory. That's a mouthful. Jake Rogers, Andy Ibanez, Ryan Kredler, and Akil Bedu are on their bench. Look, if you pitch around Riley Green and Matt Verling, they don't run. Their starting pitching has been good, but their bullpen has been meh. I'll give mine right away here. Joe, I think we're going at least 2-1 in this series, to be completely honest with you. I think it's weird to say, but right now with Lodolo out, Carson Spires is probably our third best pitcher, based on the way that his 3 starts have gone. You get him, you get Hunter Green, and you get Lodolo all at home. You're going to get them on a Friday Connect game. I'm actually going to be at that game, Joe, to watch Carson Spires pitch. I'm pretty excited to be there. I really think that they could win 2 or 3 of these games. I just don't think their lineup's very good. I think we have a much better rotation going against them because I think we're going to be dodging Flaherty. At least I can't remember. I went through. I'm normally predicting these incorrectly, so I apologize, but I believe that we do. Their best hitter, Kelly Carpenter, is out. He's not going to be back until the end of July. I just don't think this team's very good. I think even with our beat-up team, I think we are a much better team than they are. And I think that we'll, grab a couple games back here, Joe. Maybe even all 3. I mean, you find a way to win all 3, cancel out that Yankees series, and you're feeling a lot better heading into, 4 games with Colorado and 3 with 4 games with Colorado and 3 with Miami. And then you come back from the All-Star break and you get the Nationals, who are right in the same area as we are. You get a Braves team that's lost their best player, a Rays team that's solid, and a Cubs team that is really underperforming. Like, I did say I think the season's over at 9 wins or at 9 losses or 9 games under, whatever the word is. But if they are going to bring it back, this has got to be the start in Detroit or against Detroit.
Yeah, I like I said, think the season's over now. I know it's early to say that 6 games under 500, but just everything we've gone through, I just don't know how things turn around with all the injuries and everything. So I'm saying it's over now. So now I can just kind of watch it with low expectations and be happy at this point. I'll still have my rants and things I have issues with the Reds, but I don't expect them to do anything this season, and hopefully they make some trades. So Lodolo, I don't think is expected. I don't think he's eligible to come off the IL for this, so that changes my prediction here.
Oh,
if it was
that's
Lodolo,
right. It's going to be Ashcraft.
So I think I'm 1-2. Yeah, I'm 1-2 on this series. If I'm wrong and someone has some weird technicality that is able to come off the 15-day DL early for some reason, let me know. But I'm going 1-2. The Tigers starting pitching is a major reason why. Reese Olson, I believe he's like 2-8, but he has like a 3.3 ERA, which shows you how bad the Tigers are, especially that lineup. We have a chance. I think Casey Mize there's the pitcher going against us in the second game. Probably can beat him when Hunter Green's going against him. But that Sunday game with Ashcraft versus Skubal, he's been really good this year. Really fun to watch if you get a chance to watch. I guess we'll watch him on Sunday. But if you get a chance to watch him, otherwise he's been good this year. Not a good roster. They were outperforming their potential earlier in the year, and they've kind of cooled off, and that's something to note. Definitely, if the Reds play to their potential, they can win 2 to 3 games in this series easy. But just the way they're playing right now, the inconsistencies, the injuries, we know like Friedel's injured. I think he's projected to come back in the next couple of days here. And then, Candy, they've said that like it's going to bother him all season long. So I don't know if we can really expect him to really get back on that tear. There's just a lot of reasons where I think they're going to go 1-2 for this series. I'll be watching. We'll see what happens. I really do respect this Tigers starting pitching. They really do have a really good thing. If they get any run support, they could sweep us. I mean, that's how good the starting pitching has been for them. But I'm going to say 1-2. I think the Reds have another rough week, and then maybe have a good week before the All-Star break to kind of get my hopes back up. But again, I'm shutting myself off. I'm putting up we talk a lot about mental health these days. Putting up a mental wall. I'm not going to let the Reds ruin my mental health by getting drawn back in if they win 7 straight against the Rockies and Miami next week.
Joe's got them going 1-5 this week. I have them going 2-4, which even 8 games under is still very, very rough. So we'll have to see. Hopefully the Reds will surprise us. If they find a way to go 4-2 this week, Joe, I will do something very dramatic. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I will find out what that is whenever it comes to me on the stream, maybe, or not on the stream, on the show. But I will say it is unlikely. They don't do well against good starting pitching. I think that's why we've been struggling so much against the Pirates, and they just can't seem to figure out how to hit good starting pitching. So maybe these will be the series that they do it. I doubt it, but I am hopeful that they will figure something out. It'll be interesting to see what the lineup is going to look like tonight. To be honest with you, I am really intrigued to see what they're going to do, but. We'll have to see. That's the best I can do. Do you have any wiser words to send our listeners and viewers off with than what I just said?
I'm not really, but I'm excited. You still owe us a shoey from the Nick Martini stuff earlier in the year. So if they go 4-2, I'm excited to see what the next step. Doing a shoey is fun, but what the next step after that is for a 4-2 record, which. Again, they are fully capable. They show up against good teams. They're very streaky. This could be a time where they streak and get 6 wins straight. I don't really see that happening. Just
that would be
everything
insane.
That's going on. But it's just I could see it happening. But I would say the more likely scenario is they have a very rough week and gets a lot of the Reds fans a little bit more apathetic, and then we'll have to try to get everyone back the next week and possibly make some trades and see what's going on. This is a big month for the Reds, I think. A lot of times we get kind of, I guess we focus in on all the games we're playing, the Yankees, the Tigers, the Rockies, Marlins. This is a lot of decisions need to be made this month on the future of the Reds when they have that trade deadline at the end of the month. If some of these guys don't hit, they might be gone. If we do hit, maybe they can save their jobs. Maybe we can actually go for it this year. It's just a very, very tough week for them schedule-wise, given that the Yankees are on the road and the Tigers have that starting pitching. So the good news is if you are giving up on the season like I have and are putting up that boundary, not letting the Reds ruin your life anymore, which I know I say that and they'll pull me back in at some point. The good news is we can still watch for the young guys. We can still watch these trades and see how things go. That's all I got.
I'll be watching specifically for the young guys right now. I know it sounds like I have hope, but I don't know. I'm still 50-50 at this point. I was writing out everything for these notes, Joe, and I was like, man, it does not look good for our Reds. They really needed to win like 2 more games, I think, in June for me to feel a lot better. And it is that close, guys. Just remember that. It is literally those razor-thin margins of 2 or 3 wins can really determine the entire future for the club. So every game really does count in baseball, as much as people don't like to say that. It is a long season, but we will have to see what happens. So I think that's going to do it for us here, Joe. And with that, guys, we'll catch you on the next one.